So welcome to Society for Intuitive Research, SIR meetings, and I usually host these, but since it's Brian and Devin, I'm kind of gonna turn it over and let them kind of do their thing. So this is gonna be a cross-life reading. So it's a past life reading, but it is one that they had together. And I'm really excited to hear this. So, all right, guys.
So we have a lot of past life reports to choose from. So we were thinking about which one to share.
Yep.
So we thought about our very first one, but in our very first one, we were still in that part of the relationship that's very easy and magical.
I like to call the honeymoon phase.
Honeymoon phase. And so the report kind of reflected that level of depth. And then we've had more recent ones where we've been married in the past life, and it reflected more harmony and productivity, more of the way that our relationship is now. So we decided to pick the one that came from the dark ages of our relationship. So this is from 7/7/17, so about 5 years ago. And this was during the period of our relationship that was most challenging.
Yeah.
And so you'll hear the essence of that in the report. And the reason we picked this one is because there are a lot of similarities in relationships, among relationships where the focus is on growth and personal freedom versus the kinds of relationships that are glorified in media where one person fulfills the other person.
Yeah.
And so it can feel pretty intense when the intention for a relationship is to transcend the ego and to see those things that are buried within you, those beliefs that are limiting you more clearly. So sometimes the way that manifests in a relationship is really challenging and painful and intense. And it could be easy to see those experiences and think there's something wrong here. This means that this relationship is toxic, or this means this relationship isn't productive. And so we really wanted to share this because I think it points to a lot of the places where we can experience more freedom. So that is what you will receive today. So 5 years ago, anything you would add to my little spiel?
I don't think so. I think that sounds perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
Any questions before we start? Everybody here knows how intuitive reports are retrieved. Yes.
It's my first time.
It's your first time?
Perfect.
Well, then, let me just set the stage. Okay, I'll set the stage a little better then. So the way that, so you're familiar with the mind triangle?
Yes.
Okay, so between the fourth and fifth levels of mind, which is between the lower and upper astral levels, there's the Akashic records, which are the record of a soul's history. So the reporter in this CD is Dr. Pam, and the conductor is Dr. Tad. They have both been with the school, I believe, since the 70s, if not early 80s. And Dr. Tad stays awake the whole time, and he guides Dr. Pam's consciousness into that space between the fourth and fifth levels.
Right.
So her conscious mind is completely asleep. I can say from experience that your conscious mind really does fall asleep. It really is not an expression of the conscious mind anymore.
And therefore you don't remember anything.
So you don't remember
when you
it
wake up.
at all. It's not like hypnosis or trance. It's a complete setting aside of the conscious mind.
So when she does retrieve the records, when she comes back, she doesn't remember.
No memory. Mm-mm. Usually when I wake up, I'll have maybe an image or maybe a feeling in my body. You know, like a bowl or something.
Yeah.
Again, not to extend the discussion, but how do people access the Akashic records for themselves and remember?
So you train to do that in the school too. So everyone can access their own Akashic record, although it's a little different process because your conscious mind is still active. So that information is going through the filter of your conscious mind. Whereas
Can't change some interpretation.
it's a filter.
Right.
Yeah, it's a filter. I think you can learn to be more objective with it. But the thing I really appreciate about the way that these reports are retrieved is there's not that filter.
Okay.
And usually they're given in a really direct, succinct way, which I appreciate that too. So at this time, when we asked for the report, the lifetime that was described is the lifetime where the challenges that we were facing at this time in our relationship were somehow resonant with what we were learning in this past life, and you'll hear it, and we'll talk about it. And so this would not be the past life that would come up for us now, but it was what was needed then. So we tend to incarn with soul groups, soul family groups, and work on similar kinds of things. Which is neat because I feel really spoiled because we've had so many past life reports now that you can see the themes. You know, you can see like, okay, so this soul is really interested in understanding this part of consciousness. And lifetime after lifetime, it picks these lessons that are related to this kind of learning. It's whatever that soul is uniquely attracted to understanding in the created world. So the same is true with soul relationships. It's like souls come together to work on particular things and to use particular learning styles. So it's fun to see that. Like our first few crossings were all sisters. We just kept being sisters over and over, and it was like, this is getting awkward. Like, I want to be something other than a sister. And so, but you can tell like the dynamic was the same, even though it's a different relationship.
Hi, TJ.
Still a soul relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Come on in.
Come on in. There's a chair right there. Or you can find yourself a new one. Yeah.
That one's invisible.
That's Rodney's favorite chair. Nope.
Nope.
So this life that we're about to share the crossing is from the time in our relationship that was the most challenging. 5 years ago.
Yep.
Okay.
And as such, where we gained the most.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Rockin'.
You will search for the identity of the entity referred to as Devon Elizabeth Westphalia. Elizabeth Westphalia. W-E-S-T-P-H-E-L-I-N-G.
It's
Devon
really bad.
Elizabeth Westphalia.
What if it's a CD player?
It is, yeah. The CD is not working.
You will relate a significant crossing of paths with this one referred to as Devon Elizabeth Westphalia, and that one referred to as Brian Douglas Hoover. Brian Douglas Hoover. Relate that significant crossing of paths.
Oh, I did a little bit. It made him cough.
Watch the video.
Yeah. It's a hard one for her to find. Probably a lot of information.
You see both of these ones to be in female form.
Can you pause it?
Relationship of these ones to be.
Can you guys hear that at all? Would you rather me read it?
I
We can use
can
one to
hear
the
it,
female
but if you
form and
wanna-
Maybe read.
that'd be cool if you got it.
Yeah.
It's just so.
Yeah, read it.
I heard it fairly well.
Yeah, but I'd rather.
I think Devin probably.
pause it and it's
Devin reads really good too, so maybe that'd be good.
Go for it.
Okay. You will relay the significant crossing of paths, with this one referred to as Devin Elizabeth Westfelling, and that one referred to as Brian Douglas Hoover, and relate that significant crossing of paths. We see both of these ones to be in female form. We see the relationship of these ones to be sisters. We see for the one of the second vibration
Me.
to be the elder of the two. We see that these ones were orphaned at an early age. We see for this to have been from a plague. We see that these ones were able to escape that and to move to a different area. We see for these ones to go and live with relatives. Correction, we see for these ones to live with those who were friends of the family, like relatives, at a distant place. And for these ones, the ones who received the two girls, to have a sense of grief for their loss and a sense of sorrow, and at the same time, a sense of love and protectiveness. We see for both of these ones, especially for the one of the eldest sister, to tell the younger that they were all they had.
You're all we have.
I know. And therefore, these ones bonded together very closely, took care of each other, protected each other. And we see that there were times when these ones operated as one mind, because they had committed to the kinship between them. We see for these ones to be quiet in nature. We see this was also due to what they had witnessed, the illness and the parents' bodies becoming weaker and dying. These ones did witness that. We see that these ones were 7 and 9, respectively, when this did occur. We see, therefore, that there was a kind of dependency that these ones had with each other. We see that the love was very deep between these ones. We see that where these ones went, it was a dairy farm, and we see for these ones to participate in the responsibilities of the animals. We see that these ones felt great comfort in being with the animals and being in the fields with them. We see that both of these ones learned to milk and to care for the animals, to feed them. We see that this aided these ones to forget where they had come from and to focus upon the life that they were melding for themselves. We see that these ones were very shy, very withdrawn, and had difficulty in engaging with others, and therefore stayed together with themselves.
Sound extremely traumatized.
Yeah. We see for neither one of these ones to marry. We see for these ones to stay with the family and then to take over the farm as the ones that these ones had moved to aged and withdrew. That means die. And we see for these ones then to take care of the animals and the farm. We see as these ones aged, there were cousins that came to aid and to know that they would be taking over the farm. We see for this to occur. We see for the one of the elder sister, the second vibration, to withdraw first at the age of 39. That's what she aged to. We see for the first vibration to withdraw shortly after. We see for the one of the second vibration, Tim, this was due to difficulty in the lungs. We see for the first vibration, this also was from pneumonia. We see for these ones to move from Germany to what would be referred to as Switzerland. We see for the one of the first vibration to have been referred to in that lifetime as Elsa Bonhoeffer. We see for the one of the second vibration to have been referred to in that lifetime as Katrina Bonhoeffer. We see the time period of this incarnation to be that of 1300s. This is all. So that's the past life. So,
Is that considered to be a good life for 1300s?
Probably.
I don't know, 39.
That's pretty young.
I do think it's interesting that it's like described as these ones aged.
Yeah.
Because
To the ripe age of 39.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that probably was back then.
Yeah.
Like, that's why people be having kids at.
That's like how we are now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
45 was considered pretty old.
Hmm.
Well, you guys survived the plague.
We survived the plague,
know.
right?
What was the century?
1300s. So we moved from Germany to what is now called Switzerland. So one of the things, this is kind of like surface level, but one of the things that I like about past life reports is a lot of times there are names in them that are similar to names that are in your current lifetime. The most dramatic one of those for me was so when Eli, my youngest, who's 12 now, when he was a baby, I used to always call him Eloysius, and his name's Eli, so it's not like Eloysius was short for Eli. But that name felt to me like love. It felt like that was the name of love. And so whenever I called him that, it was a name of love to him. And people would ask me about it, and it was like, I don't know where it came from. It's just Eloysius. And then when Brian and I got our Dharma reports, his was from a Roman lifetime, and his name was Eloysius. And when I heard it, like my whole body was just like flooded with energy, and it was like, oh my gosh, that's where that's from. It's from that lifetime together. So in this lifetime, his name was Katrina, and that's my mom's name. My mom's name is Trina. And Elsa, that was a name that I thought of when I was naming my kids. So it's just neat, like names have vibrations that carry a certain quality of consciousness or of self. And so it's interesting to see.
I had like 2 of the same names. And
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep. So it's interesting to see how those energies repeat. So the essence of that lifetime was we were really traumatized and then kind of clung to each other for life and never got married, never left each other. We really felt like we were all that we had. And so after seeing the parents die in this real traumatic way, it was like, we can never leave each other's side kind of thing. Anything else you would?
Yeah, it was probably a freaky time.
I know. Yeah. All right.
yeah, Dark Age.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just like that time in a relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Parts of ourself dying away.
Yeah. Any questions before we do the significance? Okay. Very well.
Very well.
What would be the significance of that lifetime to the present lifetime for these two entities? We see within the present association that there is a deep love that these ones experience with each other. We see that there is a kind of bonding, a kind of closeness that these ones experience, a kind of knowing what the other is thinking, a kind of sharing that these ones have. We see that in this, there is the desire to remove the selves from life and focus solely upon each other. Would suggest to these ones that for complete fulfillment to occur for both of these ones, that these ones need to learn to move in and out of the relationship, to come together, to be one, and then to know that they can move independently of each other. We see that there is a kind of dependency that is developing between these ones. Would suggest to both of these ones that there is great potential within each one, and that the greatest fulfillment that these ones can have is to explore their own life, their own self, and allow the other to do the same, and then to come together. Would suggest to these ones that these ones consider that moving in the world is a way to be the best for the other, and that each time they come together, they can bring a better part of themselves, which is their best, to the other. And this can only occur when these ones are separate, and therefore would suggest to these ones to look forward to these times of seeing how the other is different, how the other is unfolding. Would suggest to these ones to share their desires, their goals, their loves, their fears, so that they may recognize that there are some similarities and some differences, and to honor the differences and allow the other those differences. Would suggest to these ones that in allowing this, these ones can flourish. This is all. So before we get to the questions part, that's the significance. So before we maybe talk about how we experience that, did that stimulate any thoughts in anyone?
Sound like attachment theory.
Yeah. Right.
Same idea with you guys.
Yeah.
Your perspective is valid.
I think a lot of it was, I think at that time, you guys were, seeing your ideas as separate. And I think it was reminding you that you guys can bring separate opinions, but they still benefit each other. I think, at
Yeah.
that time you guys had very like separate ideas.
Mhm.
So I think that's what I was saying.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure. And there were times when that felt scary, like there was so much. I'll just speak from my part and then I'll let him speak from his part. I had so much attention on wanting the relationship to be harmonious because there was this feeling of dependency. And unconsciously, it felt like my security depended on it. And almost like survival. And so when there wasn't a harmony between ideas and perspectives, it felt life-threatening. Like in the body, that's how it felt. My reasoning, logical mind made it make sense and pretended like that wasn't how it felt, but that was how it felt in the body. So that when there was conflict or not seeing eye to eye on something or how to move through something, it felt so threatening. So there was this way over attachment on just needing to be with him and always wanting to stay connected. So when I was working in between clients, I would be texting him because we needed to stay connected. Couldn't lose that connection. Why is he not texting me back? I wonder what's going on. Oh my gosh, did I make him mad? I wonder if he's mad. It's been so long, he's probably mad. It was just there was this absurd amount of attention on the connection that seemed in my mind meant something different to me than it could be. So because there was that over attention on the relationship as the entity, there was not the attention on my connection to myself. It felt like everything went through the filter of our connection. And so everything I was experiencing in life was impacted by my perceived connection to him. And so hearing this life, whenever we first received this, it was shit. Okay, so in that lifetime, all we had was each other. That was really the belief. And we got to stay together because if I lose sight of you, you might get the plague and die. And that would feel like losing everything that we had left. So it helped me to reframe that kind of energy that was in my body that felt like I depend on him. It was the beginning of being able to transform that energy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more that I'll say about that when we get into the questions, but I wanted to...
Are you saying it was kind of helpful to have this framework of, our lives depended on each other in a past life is why I'm experiencing this energy now, instead of seeing yourself in the present as having some type of dependency or lack? It gave other
It definitely
context
gave
to
a
help move forward.
context.
Yeah.
It helped me understand the intensity.
Right.
It was so intense in a way that didn't match up with my conscious thoughts about it.
Right. I think for me, I too didn't want to be away and didn't want her to be away. But the thing about that was, just like it said, it really became kind of like a vacuum. And no growth, as it says, happens in a vacuum. And the interesting thing about that is, I think during that time period, there was a time period in which we stayed the same because we excluded ourselves from other learning opportunities to have experiences, to evolve ourselves and bring a different self back to the relationship when we saw each other later that evening. And because our tendency, even when we were outside of moments with each other, was probably to be focused on each other, even in our minds, thinking of, I can say that was true for myself, thinking about her and what she was doing, that I really couldn't even receive the totality of the environment that I was in at that time because my attention was on her. So then therefore I couldn't really receive the possible change that was happening wherever I may have been. So I think that we how did that change begin to happen? I think that I started to see that what wasn't working, and started to see that when we were out, we did have different experiences that made us different, and we could bring that difference back. And it literally over time slowly actually started to see that what she was bringing back as differences in her was valuable and it wasn't a loss. And I think just slowly started seeing almost like an appreciation for the changes is what allowed me to allow us to be apart a little bit more. Slowly. Very slowly.
And there still is some of that, I think.
Yeah.
Between you guys, but I can tell that it's definitely a lot.
We definitely like to be around each other. But you brought up another interesting point a minute ago of how our ideas were kind of separate because that was at play at the same time. Even though we wanted to be together, it's like there was this differences in opinion that kind of repelled each other at the same time that we wanted to be together. So it was a very challenging time. And it did take a long time. I remember one of the biggest changes in me that I just I'm so grateful for today is the understanding that, and I can't believe that this wasn't a real clear understanding before, but the true understanding that that her ideas, even though opposing mine at times, were equally as true. That's such a fascinating idea. And not only are her ideas equally as true, even though seemingly completely opposing, but also every other person in the world, their ideas are equally as true, even when they seem opposing. And when I really saw how that was so, then the kind of repelling that we would do from not understanding each other began to subside, and then her thoughts could seep into me more, and I could understand her to a greater degree, and my thoughts would seep into her more, and she could understand me to a greater degree. And then that's when that more cohesion and working together process started to happen, which is more of what we're in now. So that was my big thing, and that was what you were kind of to speak to what you were describing a second ago.
You could put some cohesive tape on.
Yeah, that's what we did.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
There's a point where those differences can be threatening to the feeling of the relationship, like what's gonna happen.
Right, totally.
Can we get through this?
Yeah.
Can this person have a different viewpoint right now and we can still be together and not so
Yeah.
if you get to a point where that doesn't threaten you or scare you, that's a huge shift.
It's surprisingly hard to get through that too.
Mhm.
Because
Can you guys recall specific examples
of like where these clashings.
Like ideas.
Yeah.
Sure.
Great.
Uh,
Because in my head I was thinking literally everything, but I don't know if I could land on one though.
It was literally everything because we had such different backgrounds. We were coming from such different life
Yeah.
experiences.
Points of view was just so different.
Yeah. It was really weird because how much time do we have? It was really weird because like I saw myself in him so much and it seemed like we were this one same being. So to see that my one same being could have such insane thoughts about things was just so shocking to me. And it was so hard to like accept that my one same being was so confused about everything. So like one of the things that actually gets spoken to kind of next, well, in a couple of questions, was that I had been raised in a family where conflict happened every single day and people were expressing strong opinions and strong ideas every single day. And that's what I saw was the whole family was talking about politics and they were talking about these different aspects of humanity and all these strong opinions. And what I saw from that was sometimes there was strong emotion in that too, but at the end of it, it was an enriching thing that happened. Everyone's perspective got expanded. And so I was very comfortable with that kind of conflictual feeling energy. It felt good to me. It was like, yes.
You felt like love.
It felt like love. It was like, this is how we help each other to think about things more deeply. And I get to know something I wouldn't know before. And so it was like, that's what you do. That's the best thing that you can do. And his experience was totally different.
Yeah. My experience growing up was that, I never saw my parents interact in any kind of combative way. That was never, it was never that at all. And so, but the one times it did happen is when I was in trouble or whenever someone was mad and upset. And so that was not evidence of love by any means. That was evidence of there's a problem. And we're about to abandon ship, probably, that kind of thing, severity. And so, and not only that, but everything has two sides to it. I see it as I had the good fortune to spend many years of my life virtually alone. And due to that time, I learned how to be with myself during those types of emotions. And I learned how to process those types of emotions by myself skillfully. And so that's the way I did it. That's the only way I knew how to do it. And so, but when someone else would bring those to the table, because I wasn't used to processing them with another person, to me, that was something she was supposed to be processing on her own, because that's what I did on my own. But she learned to process those things with other people. So she built a valuable skill that I didn't have, which is dealing with those challenging emotions with other people, whereas I learned a very valuable skill that she didn't necessarily have, which is to do it by myself, to do it by herself. And so it was a seeming contrasting, stark differences that created a lot of challenge points at first, but it gave us both the opportunity to learn something that we didn't know previously, because I demanded to process it on my own, so she was forced to learn to process it on her own a little bit. And conversely, over time, I finally had to know I love this person. So I had to start giving what she needed, which was someone to process with. And so then I learned to process with other people in those ways. So we were really the perfect support for what we both needed at that time, which is the nature of every relationship that has challenges. It is the perfect dynamic for what's needed for those people at that time.
I also think you were brought into kind of like a new type of family dynamic, because our family is the same way. Like, conflict isn't necessarily like a scary bad thing. And I'm also very used, just like she is, to dealing with that. And so it wasn't just her that you were having to deal with.
Yeah.
It was the whole family.
Totally.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
that was interesting.
It was not just her that you were trying to figure out. You were trying to
Mhm.
figure out this whole new family
Yeah.
dynamic that was totally separate from what you were used
to, yeah.
And so it was like,
It was super hard, but we've all come together in ways that we didn't previously, and I'm super grateful for that.
I think my child is in a kind of environment similar to what you lived in, Devin. One time when I was about 5 or 6, my family and I went to an ice cream social, and one time when I was just sitting down enjoying myself, a woman who was sitting like about 20 feet away, she was like, "I did not know what was going on, but this needs to stop immediately. I do not have any sympathy for this at all."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's a moment that's probably something like we're talking about was happening for her.
Yep.
Yeah. It was a pretty good thing what I lived as well.
Yep. So a lot of times what would happen is we'd get to these points where if there was a non-understanding, I would think the way to resolve this and get back to peace and harmony is we need to just stay in this room and talk about it. And that wasn't how I experienced it. I thought, let's just have open, authentic communication and we'll get all the ideas out and I'll receive you and you'll receive me. And he was like, I'm going to go for a walk, which sounds lovely now, but to me then felt like utter and complete abandonment. Like, now I will die is how it felt. Okay, so.
And interestingly, part of that energy for me, we found out later, came from a past life to where I shared my feelings. Now, granted, at that time she was trying to get me to share and have those conversations, and because of my, I was used to processing it on my own, but there was a past life related to just that. Why I was used to processing it on my own, because one time in a past life I shared how I felt, and the elders whom I was sharing with told me no, I couldn't have what I wanted, and I got mad and I shared an emotion. I shared how I felt and accidentally knocked over this this candle or this
like
this,
a lantern
kind of
thing.
And it burnt the whole village down.
So you don't share emotions.
Village down. And so I experienced so much shame and so much. I learned at that point on, you do not share those types of feelings. And so that's kind of the energy that was moving in me at that time still.
All right, moving on. Okay, they ask, okay, this is so sad, okay. They ask, what belief could each entity change to create harmony between them? Would suggest to the one of the first vibration for this one to change the belief that this one needs the other to be complete. This one is complete in the self. Would suggest to the one of the second vibration to change the belief that the one of the first vibration needs this one. Would suggest to the one of the second vibration to expand on this. Would suggest to this one to consider that the one of the first vibration wants this one rather than needs this one. This is all. So that describes the dependency.
So I have a question. How did your spiritual practice help you through this phase, individually and together?
I think that for me, it was that the thing I wanted more than anything was the transcendence of everything that was keeping me from knowing myself as love and the divine. And so I knew that everything that he was stimulating in me, everything, every reaction, every fear, every pain that was coming up in me was something that I wanted to see. I didn't want those things to remain dormant and well managed. And so my purpose for the relationship wasn't let's figure out how to be happy and just feed each other's egos. It really was, I really want a partner who is devoted to this path of freedom. And so even when it was so painful, I knew that he, just by the nature of who he is in this lifetime, was the perfect stimulus for me to see those things in me that needed healing. That in my past relationships, I had not been able to see or touch. Like I was, we were talking about this earlier, like prior to our relationship, I had a 10-year marriage where we almost never fought. There was almost never any conflict. That was actually true. There wasn't.
Perspective.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Reminds me of
Yeah.
my last relationship where there were basically no fights until
Right.
2.5 years, and then it imploded.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what happened.
So,
Right. So there was this thing to compare to where it's like, I know how to be in a relationship where there's no fighting. So what's the problem here? And so it's easy. Like I see this with couples a lot who are for the first time in a spiritually focused relationship where it's like, the problem must be the other person because in my last relationships, we didn't fight or we didn't have conflict. And so what I've really realized is that our souls chose these personality setups that would be the perfect match to stimulate all of the egoic stuff that desired to be healed and transcended. That was what helped me to.
So to answer your question from my perspective, how my spiritual practice helped me in all this was prior to this relationship, I had become super clear that anything that I see happening in the world is only of me.
right. Comes from you.
It's my interpretations. And because I was so clear that anything I see, any of my interpretations of what I see, the physical things doing was of me and not of the world, then I had a spiritual foundation to work this out because I saw her doing things that was wrong and bad. But these things are only my interpretation based on my own past experience. And because that was so clear in me, that was my spiritual foundation in which I was understanding this situation from. So if I didn't have that spiritual foundation to where I knew that anything I saw in the world was just my own interpretation, just a projection, if I didn't know that, then this person would be wrong and bad and needing to leave my life. But because my prior spiritual work had shown me that anything I see happening in the world is only my interpretation, then it pointed the fingers at me, and I knew that this is the thing that needed to be reworked. However, that experience I only was clear on in those real intense moments, when I was the most settled and the most calm and things like that. But I think that's my basis of spiritual practice. That helped a lot.
So then would it be correct to say that there was a sort of self-awareness that was in there, that was with both of you, that actually helped sort out the problems? Essentially, the spiritual understanding of how things function is what kept you guys together, rather than, because that those are a big conflict, at least from what I can see, what I can understand and perceive in terms of more philosophical or
Right.
ideas, the way a relationship should function, the way conflict should be managed. Those are like really different ideas. But if you actually survive that, and survive is a negative word. But
Yeah,
if you actually,
I know what you mean.
That's how it felt.
Yeah, totally.
But if you actually work through that, would you then say that the spiritual awareness, some sort of spiritual awareness, was what actually helped you guys through this process?
So the timing of when you guys got together was really important in this lifetime. Because if you'd gotten together earlier,
Mm-hmm.
might have been different.
Yeah,
For sure.
totally.
So was he always the elder?
He seems to be. That seems to be my older sister.
In most of the lifetimes that you had together?
At least a few.
I don't know, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that does kind of like create, if you're close in that relationship, a certain dependence on the
Mhm.
older, and then a
Yeah.
care for the younger. You know,
Yeah, right.
responsibility
Mm-hmm.
dynamic.
Right. Yep. Okay. They say identify the most prominent point of misunderstanding each has about the other. You can see the kinds of questions we were asking. We see this is related to what has been given in the beliefs. We see that as the dependency continues, there are misunderstandings between these ones. Therefore, it would suggest to these ones to consider that there is very little growth in a vacuum, that there needs to be independent growth for the relationship to flourish. This is all.
And now I think we bring to the table new stuff all the time to each other that adds to our life. And I even go to her and she goes to me asking for perspectives on something which we didn't have the capacity to do previously. I know I didn't have the capacity to do that previously. So that vacuum thing, there's some really important stuff with that.
They ask, what area of interaction or communication would create needed change in areas of resistance or avoidance? We see that both of these ones are aware of certain ideas that these ones consider not appropriate, not pleasant in the self and in the other, and are afraid to express to the one of the other that there is something wrong in this, that this will cause an eruption within the relationship. Would suggest to these ones that it is what is not being said that is causing the eruption, that there needs to be the open communication of what the true feelings are. That can then bring to light what each of these ones are experiencing, and not to be afraid of their fears or any dark thoughts they have. Would suggest to these ones that in saying them, this brings them into the light, and they can be understood more directly. This is all.
That needs to be like on a poster. Big.
Mm-hmm.
A wall poster, maybe put it up on the wall
On
somewhere.
a wall, on a banner, flag.
Which part specifically?
Uh-huh.
That whole
Okay.
that passage
Yeah.
that you just read
Yeah.
about, instead of keeping these things inside, to bring them
Mhm.
out,
Right.
so that it just doesn't boil up and erupt, just like it described.
Mm-hmm.
Here was my problem with that at that time is there was a layer of shame over expressing in those ways at that time. And it took me much pain from the eruptions and then sitting with that pain to finally realize the way in which that pain was not shameful, the way in which that pain was okay. And I remember sitting one day and finally realized that it was okay to feel this way. And that all I could do when I felt this way is feel. And what I was trying to do previously, which was motivation from the shame, is to get rid of that feeling because that feeling is bad. It's something that should be hidden. And so when I finally realized that it's okay to feel that way, then I could express my feelings to her more readily because they weren't shameful anymore. They weren't bad. But it took me a long time of sitting with those after the eruptions for me to finally realize that it's just as it is. The feeling is fine. So that was my problem with that at that time.
That's nearly universal.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The part that I had to navigate was, so this part felt intuitive to me. It felt like, yes, that's what you do. You express things so that they can be in the light and they can then evolve. But the thing that caused me to hold back from that was that usually if I did that, then he would leave
Go for a walk.
and go for a long walk.
Out of here.
And long walk, and because that felt so like threatening to my security, it would be like, I gotta say this, just like the most careful,
Perfect
non-threatening way. And so I would just say something in not really an authentic way to try and manufacture this kind of like security that I thought I needed. And if I screwed it up and he left, then it was like, you know,
Yeah.
it felt like there's more evidence. It's not safe to share my authentic feelings because then he leaves and the connection is broken. And the feeling was so intense. Like, it's so hilarious and also tragic for me to look back on it now because, I mean, I would just like collapse in the floor and cry, and it would just feel so like I had been abandoned. The reality was he was going for a lovely walk to like reduce his negative emotions. But that wasn't how, you know, the little sister who clung to her older sister for life was feeling. So the thing for me to navigate was to go ahead and be willing to express what within me needed to be expressed and to allow him to respond in whatever way he needed to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And to give myself permission to go through that feeling of abandonment and to see over and over what's on the other side of it, that there actually was life on the other side. And it took some time, like years of that experience to know this isn't happening the way that I want it to, the way that my human wants it to, but this is producing the evolution of what within both of us really desires to be evolved.
Because I actually needed her to express in that way because I needed to experience that pain so I could sit with it and so I could realize that it's not bad, it's not shameful. And I needed experiences of her doing that, not sugarcoating it. So it works both ways like that. I needed those experiences, but I would not have said that at that time. I would have said, you better stop that stuff. That's not working for us, clearly.
And I would always say, it's because you don't stay long enough for it to work.
Right.
You know, we both saw it clearly.
Yeah, right.
We both saw it clearly.
Because we did see it clearly from our perspective.
Right.
I take walks really frequently just to relieve my negative emotions.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm learning about that. I'm learning about that slowly.
I told Sam once, I was like, yeah, Brian likes to take long walks because there's like something in documentary about like walking and stuff, and he's like, maybe I should try to do that, and I immediately was like,
Yep, that's funny.
What a deep service. It's just the depth of it is like almost infinite.
Totally.
To other lives, it's like the perfect stimulus.
I know.
To heal all the family stuff and all the conflict stuff.
Yeah.
And then to heal all of your family and all of it. It's just like there's no words.
But you just got to stick it out, you know? You just got to stay in it.
Yeah, and go through the friction where everything is blindness.
Yeah.
And there's just this one thing that is the love for the other that just holds you together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a deep report.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, now that you can see it from also,
Yeah.
you know, like the death comes now that you can see the growth. But
yeah.
Thank you for sharing this.
It reminds me of some of the things I've learned watching my cat. Because she's terrified of everything. And I watch her constantly react out of this, I've got to protect myself, I've got to protect myself, I've got to protect myself. And that's what I'm hearing.
Right.
Totally.
Right.
And it's so natural because all of us have this deep-seated terror of rejection.
Yeah.
And so when we see anything, we're like, there it is.
Yeah,
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I wasn't on guard enough.
Yeah.
And we internalize that and we start taking things personally that weren't personal.
Right, totally.
But just that narrative that we told ourselves, it's not true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we've built that narrative, and I think you're right. You've got to go through it. You've got to go through the terror to see what's on the other side and go, oh, actually, it wasn't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I just wrote an article for Vibes about this because we just got married and our vows were so non-traditional. It's so different from committing to a relationship. So I wrote this Vibes article recently, and it'll be out here in a minute, and you guys can read it like in a few days or something. But one of the things that kind of came to my mind that really was the image of what it was like was it felt like I was watching this self that was everything that I believed myself to be, watching it walk toward the edge of the cliff and thinking like, what is going to be left of me when all of this that I thought was me, like my good communication skills and my reasoning abilities and like all these things that I thought those are the things that will make sure I have a good relationship and success and all this stuff. It's like I'm watching it walk towards the edge of the cliff, and what'll be left of me when it takes that last step. That really is how it felt. It sounds so dramatic, but that's how it felt. Yeah. And what is left of me, which I still feel like it's like this lifelong journey that we're on. I mean, new stuff is always coming up. But what I feel now is so much more connected to that self that is the same in us, that's not separate from the self that expresses itself as Brian. It's like I'm feeling so much more connected to the self that is present in both of us, and even more expanded than that there's not the fear of separateness anymore. And so I can see him move in and out of my small self life, and there doesn't feel like the separation. And I think I had to watch that separate self fall off the cliff to be able to step into that freedom. So the thing I appreciate the most, one is the freedom, of course. It's a joy to be in our relationship now, whereas in this stage it was not. It was very painful, very, very agonizing.
Totally.
Because there was the deep love, and so it was so painful to see how is it that we can have this deep love and also feel so separate, so painful. So I appreciate the freedom, but I also appreciate being able to sit with other people who are describing what sounds like these horrible conditions. And sometimes it's hard for me to not smile and not say words like, this is perfect. It's the perfect setup. Don't you see? It's the perfect setup that you guys chose. But I don't say those words at first.
You're going to get so much from it.
Yeah, this will be so great in 5 years.
In 5 years.
But to know while they're in that kind of agonizing part of the relationship, either with themselves or with a partner, that this was the very the most perfect environment that a soul could choose to become totally free of those things that cause it to forget who it really is. And how beautiful to be able to do that with another where there's love.
Yeah.
And when there's the intensity, trust that is the universe, and that is that wiser part of yourself saying, this is the thing that will produce the most freedom for you. Don't run away from this. Don't label this as toxic or bad or whatever. This is the very thing to lean into.
Yeah.
Go as deep as you can into that thing that feels like this is where I'll lose myself. Go there, go there, go there. I trust that I can go there with them. I trust that they can go there, and that what's on the other side of that is so worth it. I love that we've been able to have that experience with each other.
Yeah.
When you guys first got the past life report and heard it, did you guys think, oh, well now I know what to do? Or
No.
What happened after it? How long did it take to?
How would you just...
At what point did it make sense?
Yes. Did it do anything for you? Like,
Okay.
cause a stimulation?
Oh, it caused a simulation, yeah. So my initial experience was, I'm gonna see this paragraph of this report, and I'm gonna say, see,
that was what happened.
see,
A lot.
we're supposed to be talking about all this stuff. You're not supposed to leave. We're supposed to be talking and talking and talking and talking.
And then I started to build resentments against
Yeah.
reports.
Yeah.
It's a weapon.
So yeah,
a
right. It was a
weapon.
weapon at first. Yeah.
Yeah, that.
Paper.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and then I also like this paragraph where it says, see, I feel like I need you and you think I need you. Look at this. This is ridiculous. And so, yeah, and so there were those things that like I really reacted to. I wasn't as favorable about the parts that said we needed to have separation. And
I was like, see, look at that.
Yeah. Like the independent learning and then come back together, that still felt scary.
Yeah.
It was a while before this.
Separation really just meaning periods of the day
Yeah.
where we go to work.
Yeah.
And she doesn't text.
Yeah, and she doesn't text, and we're
and
not
my
obsessing
attention's
about each
not
other.
on him, yeah. It took a while for
Yeah.
this to really become
Yeah.
meaningful.
Do we have a couple more spots? I have more
Um,
questions.
The last thing was relay a description of a relationship structure that would best serve these ones. And it said, this has been given in each one of these ones having and moving independently and looking forward to being with the other and seeing how the other has changed.
So what Brian said, bringing stuff back to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right after you guys got it, it was kind of maybe just even stimulated a little more conflict at the beginning, or
It was just hard. We
Everything was just
we
hard
put
then.
it in a drawer.
Yeah.
What made you even want to get it?
We were in so much pain.
Yeah.
But you still just.
It was hard to receive.
Mhm.
You know, I think we both saw this and saw, yeah, that's all right. That's
Yeah,
all
from
right.
your perspectives.
But the pain that we were in at that time made it really hard to
Implement.
implement in a
Yeah.
constructive way. It took
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
We had to kind of bang our heads against the same wall a
Yeah.
few more times.
Yeah.
so it planted the idea seeds in there, but it took it a while before that.
Probably.
the
I think so,
seed
yeah.
Yeah.
started growing and
Yeah.
it started working its way into your relationship.
All right.
It seems like
Yeah.
all great growth comes through contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's got to be contradiction where I believe this is true and yet this is what's going on, and I can't reconcile.
I know.
Right?
I know.
It forces us
Yeah.
into a corner so we actually grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
it seems like everything in life is that way.
Yeah.
It's we build muscle by destroying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Totally.
we create explosions by smashing atoms together.
Yeah.
Everything's contradiction. Everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which makes it
Agree by
that much
destroying.
more painful
Mm-hmm.
for everyone to grow.
Yes.
But it's also beautiful that you guys found each other and you guys were experiencing this deep, profound love. It was very intense, and energetically that actually forced like these old blockages that you guys had individually. They energetically just couldn't fit in with this beautiful, blissful love that you guys had. So
Right.
in order for your love to actually reach its full potential, you guys had to heal that part of yourselves, which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when you connect with somebody on that kind of a level, the fear of losing it can be very strong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Takes a minute to have to know you're solid.
Yeah. It goes through these weird phases. Like it seems like there's a lot of times a stage where there's this like attempt to possess the other. You know, how can I figure out how to like latch this down? and it's so dysfunctional, but it's almost like just an iteration of the relationship that has to play itself out. Like, as long as the two are seeming to be separate and there's this desire for oneness, there are all these attempts to like possess the other or keep the other or attach to the other or protect the other. And all of those stages just reinforce the other as the other. But
cool.
because each one produces so much pain, it teaches the ego, this isn't where you'll experience oneness. This isn't how you'll experience freedom. This is not this is not what will produce the kind of love and joy in a relationship that you want. But I think as long as we're human, I think we kind of have to go through those to get to the point where you can allow the other and then actually receive the other and even be the other.
Yeah, so you in a relationship, if you see your partner as the creator, as reflecting to you what you need, as the creator, that's like the key to consistently being able to like move through those energies.
Yep.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
Yep, and I think that's the experience of love, is when there are no longer perceived barriers of separation, that love is the creator. When you've gotten down to that level. And then there's the sameness, there's the oneness. And if there was one takeaway for me that I think has been the most helpful, it is I think I could lump it in a category and call it mindfulness. But if I were to describe it a little bit more, it would be sitting with myself, no matter what is happening. That's been the journey for me that's helped me the most, whether that may be in my own painful emotions when I separated myself, or when I was in the middle of a challenging, painful conversation in which I needed to set it out there too. Just the simple being aware or being mindful. I like being aware of what my experience is now without attempting to change or fix it. Just that capacity, just to be able to sit, just to sit through it. Not suffer through it, but just to be aware that it's happening. Be aware of the thoughts that are happening, be aware of the emotions that are happening, be aware of the position of the body. It's just that simple awareness has been the most helpful thing that's helped me in every area of this process, I would say.
I think the thing that has probably helped me the most is trusting that the universe is for my complete fulfillment. That the universe desires that the part of the divine that I represent, the universe desires that part of the divine know itself fully and completely and to its highest potential. And so every single thing in my life and every single thing in our relationship is pointing me towards that fulfillment, that complete fulfillment. And so if there's an experience of pain, it's just an indicator that there's an opportunity for greater fulfillment. It's just an indicator that there's some belief operating in that moment that doesn't support my awareness of my true self. And so that's awesome now. Like, I actually look forward to those experiences now where there's some emotional reaction in me to, especially to him. It's like whenever that happens, I'm so curious, like, because we have experienced so much freedom and awareness that when something does arise where there's a judgment or reaction, it's like, ooh, what does this have for me? It feels really exciting. Like there's something new for me to see. And what is that? And so it doesn't feel scary anymore. It feels like, what is it within consciousness now that I'm going to get to witness the evolution of? As it moves through me or our relationship, it's like curiosity and awe at the way that love moves through us, instead of feeling so afraid of losing something that I thought was separate from me. So that trust, the universe is always for my greatest fulfillment.
I'd call those popcorn moments.
Yeah.
Because in films or whatever, there'll be this really tense moment. The same token, like tension. Because it's
Yeah.
gonna end well.
Right.
It's gonna end well.
Right.
And so when I'm in the right mindset, I recognize those contradiction moments. Like, this is the time to get my popcorn and get ready for the show.
Oh, that's funny. I got
Brings it out to happen.
Right,
Yeah.
I don't know but I've learned to expect it.
Right.
Cool, right.
I know what it's gonna
There you
be,
go.
but I've learned to expect
Yeah,
it.
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know if you've seen Over the Hedge.
It's
I
been a
love
while.
Over the Hedge. But at the end, there's this big dramatic display, and the little critters are putting on sunglasses, and they've got popcorn and just watching the show.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
That's cute.
And that's what I've learned with life, is just when it gets hard,
Mm-hmm.
it's when you make your popcorn.
It's a great attitude.
That's really good. Yeah.
Settle in.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Get comfortable.
Yeah.
It's gonna get good.
Uh-huh.
It's not good.
Yeah.
But it will be.
Yeah.
Right.
I wish so much that I could go into high schools and talk to kids at that age, kids that are Catherine's age, that are having their first relationships. I wish I could talk to them about using the relationship in that way, because there's so much more opportunity and ease when you see the relationship as this place, as this environment where you fall more in love with yourself. You learn what you can let go of. You learn what's not you. And that's so different from the way I think a lot of movies show a relationship to be, where you got to find the right person who fulfills you, who can meet your needs, you meet theirs. And it's like that sets up this dynamic of dependency and fear and separation.
Yeah, it's the Jerry Maguire construction of you complete me.
Exactly.
Which ruined relationships across the world.
And I think,
Right.
yeah, right. I think Catherine is an example of this. She has this understanding, the understanding that I didn't even remotely have until 30 something, which is just, it excites me all the time when I see what you know and how you think.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's so interesting.
Yeah, I wish I could tell other high schoolers that too.
Right.
But they tend to be very close-minded.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the concept in high school of, oh, he loves me so much, he wants to hit me. Or he wants to, hit somebody else.
Yeah.
He loves me so much.
Yeah.
Right.
Or she loves me so much, she's stalking me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Okay, sorry
I think
we went
it's about
over.
that time.
Thank you guys for
Yeah.
coming.
Thank you all for coming.
Sounds good.
We love you so much.